How are you guys doing today? Good. All right, great. So we're here to talk about the omnichannel maze, and it really is a maze when you think about it. You've got like retail media networks, you've got things like TikTok, delivery services, so there's a lot to consider and to think through. So I'm gonna throw it to the panel, and I'd love to know from your perspective, how do you figure out or plan and figure out who you're gonna target and how you're gonna get in front of your consumer in this really fragmented landscape?
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Darryl Tricksey. I'm based in Atlanta. And as they mentioned, I work for a pretty large energy drink company that is really focused on live events and also media. So I would say we're a media network first. But really, the way that we work to cut through is really focusing in on ownability. We want to make sure that when we are showing up for consumers, it is in a way that is marked by, our own brand and that we're leading. I think a big way that we do that is by focusing in on work with creators who are lovers of the brand, and then also showing up in authentic scenarios and situations and creating spaces for consumers that are ownable for the brand. So as far as cut through, really when you're at a Red Bull event, it is a Red Bull event. And that's really how we make sure that we're sticky and resonate with consumers.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. First of all, I just want to say I'm sitting between Monster Energy and Red Bull, and I am a anti-caffeine person. I only drink decaf. So
maybe not after today.
I don't know. That's why, it's
You're
just like,
keeping
wait.
the peace. You're
Exactly,
like
right. No,
Intentional.
I'm naturally caffeinated, I should say. My husband tells me that. So hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Meredith from Primal Kitchen. We're a condiments and sauces brand in the natural emerging brand space. I'm based in the Twin Cities. And I guess for us, it's really navigating take a step back. My background is 20 years in agency, primarily in integrated marketing, consumer promotions. So before we kind of had the digital media landscape, it was all about like in-store and reaching consumers and shoppers in store. So for me, run our shopper marketing department, team of 2. And it's really focusing in that balance on making sure we're reaching the shopper who's making their purchase decisions. They might be making their purchase decisions and doing their search online, but they're making those purchases in store. So making sure that we're reaching shoppers both in store. There was a stat that came out from Kroger earlier this year that spoke that like 83% of purchases are made in store. Now you could argue those are happening in store, actually physically in the store, but then folks who are also from a digital perspective making those purchases through e-commerce, through the pickup and delivery services as well, where that sale actually gets attributed to a retail sale, brick-and-mortar sale. So for me, it's really been making sure that our media mix is really balancing both not only the digital space, but also making sure that I am reaching them in store, whether it's through displays, through demos, through point of purchase, POS. So really making sure that I'm balancing that media mix.
Well, you've just said a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about that landscape, coupled with some of the things that you're talking about, Darryl, on the brand side, it's basically huge investments, and I doubt any of us have enough budget to be able to activate. I mean, Jason was just talking about how he doesn't have enough budget. I think we can all say the same thing for ourselves at our respective companies. So how do you determine where you're going to put your first dollar and how you're going to try to get in front of people with all these constraints?
Oh my gosh, well, we're emerging brands. So if you're not familiar with Primal Kitchen, we're a condiments and sauces brand. Our 10-year anniversary is in February. We were founded by an endurance athlete who was, making his own products, and he was blogging before people were blogging, and people said, hey, let's make this product. If you make it, we'll buy it. So we were purchased by Kraft Heinz about 3 years in, so even though we are owned by Kraft, we are still an independent kind of LLC. So we run kind of independently. So where we spend our limited dollars really is critical for us. So it's really a balance based on what our objectives are. So we're a new brand, so we have got to get eyeballs on our brand. So our marketing team of 20, we do all of our media buying in-house. That also includes our creative. It also includes our creative production. So we have, I say that because we have very small non-working dollars. So that makes our working dollars work very hard for us because we're doing a lot of that in-house. So Where we're focusing first really is in that awareness space. So the above the line is really critical for us, and so I have a counterpart who runs all of our above the line media to really tell stories and make sure we're getting that message to come across to our core consumers. In the omni space, I'm about new to brand, so I'm really focused on those channels where I can leverage retail media data, first-party data, behavioral data, purchase data, to make sure that I can reach that new-to-brand where I can get that metric. So that's really critical for me. I would say there, and then I cannot forget that in-store shopper. So it's hard to measure, but in-store point of sale is critical to tell that story about our brand to people who that might be the first time they're ever seeing Primal Kitchen.
Yeah, I love that. I think awareness for us is we have a lot of top of mind awareness for us as a brand. I have to preference as well. I'm a field guy, so a lot of my work is making sure that I'm really close to the point of conversion, working to build events, activation, things like that, so that people convert on site. So when we talk about where I focus my dollars from a field side is really bringing our entry point consumers, so 18 to 24, people will know we're going to come into the brand, stay with the brand for a long period of time, and making sure that we are focusing our initiatives there. So the first thing is are these the right consumers that we're focused in on? And then the second piece is hyper-localization, right? So it's when you have broad awareness, it's right, how is this brand talking to me, and making sure that I matter to the brand. And so not only do we want to make sure that we're getting those right consumers at that young age, but we want to make sure that we're spending money behind tactics that are very, very localized and speak to a specific demographic. So in the South, for instance, where I live, football is key. People love football. If you live in the South, you're generally a football fan. So I want to make sure if football is something that resonates with those consumers, I want to make sure I am finding or showing up in the places where that 18 to 24-year-old consumer is going to be engaging with football, whether they're watching it, whether they're playing the sport, et cetera. So I would say those are the two key pieces, given the fact that we have such large awareness. That's what I want to focus in on so I can make sure that we really resonate.
Yeah, Kelly, you touched on data a little bit ago, and we kind of have similar challenges. Jason mentioned that we don't own the end consumer. A lot of times it's in store, it's through e-comm, whatnot. So I'm just curious how you both use data or leverage the data you have in order to be able to better reach the consumer, to target them in those moments that matter. I think there's also levels of data. There's the actual purchase data, but you've got your events and things like that on the Red Bull side. So I'm just curious how you both look to activate your data, both from an upper funnel and a lower funnel perspective.
I can start there. So we have a really strong emphasis on new and infrequent users. And so as a part of my team, I'm responsible for, the college students that go out with the cans and they sample quite consistently. And so as a part of that, there's a talk track where they gauge whether or not you're a new and infrequent user. And so we want to make sure that we're constantly touching on those new and infrequent users so we can grow our base. So that's kind of anecdotal data that we get every day to make sure that we are in the right places, talking to the right consumers. And with that, trial and awareness in general is really important for us. And so not only are we looking at new and infrequent users, but also spontaneous top of mind. Spontaneous awareness is also really important. With so many new entrants into the energy category, we want to make sure that we're competing effectively with some of these entrants, and so we're constantly monitoring our spontaneous awareness to make sure we're in the consideration set for not only general consumers, but the consumers that we're targeting, like I mentioned, at a younger Gen Z demographic. So those are key for us.
We have those teams on college campuses as well. I just wonder what that looks like when you're walking through campus, is being handed cans everywhere. Yeah. I'm sure. Sorry, Callie, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, from a data perspective, it's no secret, from a retail media network perspective, I do work very closely with those teams, those in-house teams. So really the power of leveraging their data is very helpful for us, making sure that we can, target, understand if we have a new to brand strategy, if we're targeting, we want a conquest from competitive, we definitely tap into that. From a lapsed user perspective, there might be some channels, we're a natural brand, so at a Whole Foods or a Sprouts, or on Instacart, for example, we tend to have a lot of natural and organic shoppers, making sure that we're leveraging their data to help us really get laser focused on our kind of two consumer cohorts. But so kind of balancing that retail media network and the retail first party data. But Primal Kitchen was founded 10 years ago, and we really built our brand and influencer and through our direct-to-consumer business. So we are a emerging consumer packaged foods brand that has really robust data. As I mentioned, we're part of Kraft Heinz, and we're probably the brand at Kraft, brands that have been around for a long time, that our first party, they're jealous of our first party data. So we have a lot, and we really leverage, my counterpart manages that, and we really utilize that data for our paid social strategies, for all of our retargeting, for our Google, for Meta, et cetera. But just an example of ways that we're kind of bridging the two of those together. We're actually launching our first campaign coming up, where we're going to actually be taking our first-party data, bringing and matching having an audience line items that actually bring in retailer first-party data. And building a programmatic CTV campaign that is actually leveraging both the retail media audiences along with our D2C audiences. So making our above-the-line media work really hard for us, not necessarily leveraging, all the, third-party data, our first-party data, but actually bringing in those retailer audiences as well too. So that's a really good, kind of a new strategy for us.
That's great.
I feel like we talk often about first-party data or what have you, but sometimes, I know for us as a European company, there are a lot of limitations as far as the data that we can actually leverage, and so I think that it's great when you are able to have partners. For example, we have creators and influencers and things like that, where when we are able to launch different events or what have you, we can leverage their channels in order to get a gauge as far as awareness or impressions or what have you. And so I think that's something that is often, first party data is a big deal, but oftentimes when you have limitations, you have to get scrappy around how you're determining if you're moving the needle on awareness. And so I think it's also important to kind of talk about how companies are getting creative with partnerships and things like that in order to also get reads on data.
Well, you touch on something really important, which is how are you measuring impact? I mean, it's a wide array of different tactics and spaces that you're in, and upper to lower funnel. How are you looking at whether these dollars are delivering what you expect them to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, for us in the omni retail marketing space, for us, it's against our KPIs, and it's really new to brands. So a lot of the programs that I am doing, and again, it'll be with the retail media, is making sure that I can get a measurement and understanding of new to brand metrics for our campaigns. So for example, on Instacart, they're a great partner for us in terms, they're not a retailer, but they're a great partner for us to really reach like the natural, kind of all channels basically of distribution, with the exception of the 3 big retailers that are not on their network. But it's really, the new to brand piece of it is very critical for us, and there's different ways we can reach through different ad units. So there's sponsored product that we can reach them through. So again, getting at the top of the digital shelf as a way, so people that might be contextually searching. We're also doing things to make sure that we're showing up above, at the top of the fold with display advertising, and then really the storytelling, which is critical. And I really loved what Jason was talking about, and we were talking about earlier in Jeff's session too, is like really that storytelling, trying to offer value beyond price, value beyond, because we're a very premium product in an era of inflation and private label. So for us, there's various ad units. I know you'd asked about metrics, but for us, I can leverage platforms that can actually deliver kind of the full funnel, basically. So the awareness, the storytelling with a video or a display ad, and all 3 of those bringing new to brand for us is I think a good example of how we're leveraging kind of like the full funnel to deliver against our KPIs.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say really just engagement. Like, again, being in the field, you can tell if you are converting consumers on site, if they're showing up to your events. Also, if you're able to see upticks in metrics, especially innovation is really driving a lot of our growth coming up. So we can see in pretty short windows when we have LTOs and in and outs, just how effective our our marketing mix is around LTO and share growth within a given time period. So really a big part of us is to continue to drive innovation, and then we can kind of see the uptick in our share, how we're competing with, how we're moving against competitors in those time frames.
Yeah, for us from a Monster perspective, I'll just kind of add my 2 cents. What we've been struggling with is not just looking at new to brand, ROAS, and then on the brand side, engagement and trying to bring in that new younger consumer, but also incrementality and just looking at would we have gotten that consumer anyway? So we're spending all these dollars. And is it, especially on the retail media side, and then it's like, would we have gotten that consumer anyways? And trying to really unpack that and figure out the right ways to measure that all the way through and just see, are we really reaching that net new person? Or is it someone we would have captured anyways?
We deal a lot with that in e-commerce search, getting very tactical, but the e-commerce search, the algorithms worked, during COVID, everyone was shopping and buying online. And so we look at a lot of our, total percent of total sales to ad sales to understand, are these people we would be getting them anyway, because the algorithm is actually working. So we're kind of slicing and dicing and taking a look at, do we really need to invest in that particular retailer's e-commerce platform, because are they even engaged? Are they even shopping? Is, X retailer, are they actually in-store shoppers? So why are we even spending $1 from a sponsored product perspective when we could actually be reaching them and investing maybe more in the in-store or maybe in recipes or other ways to get on that list versus being so focused on reaching them through sponsored product?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and also when you look at some of these retail media networks and how they measure attribution and sales differently. So just really trying to unpack everybody's bringing in a new buyer, new customer, and yet our sales have not gone up 75%. So someone's not entirely telling the truth, or there's some overlap.
They're grading their own homework. They're grading their own homework, and then for example, the definition of a lapsed user or a new to brand is different across every single one of the retailers too. So you have to have that little glossary at the bottom to be which one? What is the true definition of new to brand?
You touched on COVID a bit, and how things changed during that time. And one of the new things that we've had to account for in our media mix is, and I don't know what everybody calls it. We had a bit of a debate about this, or an interesting moment where I asked everybody if they're working with, in quick commerce, and everyone's like, "What? What are you talking about?" So I guess last mile delivery services. I don't know. What does everyone call it? Has anyone heard of the term quick commerce before? Okay. All right. Good. I'm not the only one. But how are you guys accounting for that in your media mix? And does it fall under brand or on the sales side?
Yeah, so for us, it very much falls on the sales side. What we've seen is I work with a lot of regional retailers, and what we're seeing is leaning into leveraging things like Uber Eats, Instacart, and bundling with retailers that are within the region. So Quick Trip is a really large kind of convenience retailer within the Southeast region, and so we'll see a lot of successes with how we're bundling with how we're bundling with other products that they have within their store, and are using those types of services to drive incrementality, to your point. So we've seen a lot of success there. In addition, we're able to have kind of a mutual exchange of value because we'll offer opportunities for retailers to show up at events and things like that, so that they can introduce their loyalty program, or they can do 2-for-1 deals or coupon or what have you. And so we're seeing a lot of success with retailers and being able to offer that value to them with some of our own events from a BTO perspective.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'd mentioned earlier Instacart, and so that is a critical partner for us, as well as, from a brand perspective, being a premium brand, people are willing to pay more for ingredients, so it's a perfect partnership for our core consumer. And I would say, also looking at, so it's not necessarily on my side of the business, so I'm managing the Instacarts and all of our click and collect partnerships, but my peer who does our above the line media, we've been looking at Uber and DoorDash, et cetera, and Uber's been a really great partner. We've done a couple campaigns because it's, again, a perfect fit for our core consumer, as well as they've been building out their grocery side of their business as well, too. So we had a campaign, I believe, that just wrapped up where you basically, would get it in your ride share, and an ad for Primal Kitchen video would come up for 5 seconds talking about it, and then you had the ability to add it to your cart. So it's kind of a way where it does fall from a media perspective as kind of the brand awareness, but it does also makes me very happy because it's driving a consideration to buy at a retailer from a conversion perspective. Granted, it's probably just an add to cart, but it's at least an engagement that, hey, Primal Kitchen may not have heard about us. We're not just a D2C brand. You can buy us at every major retailer across the country. So it is like a consideration for us.
I think it has been for us as well. One of the things we're challenged with, though, is just getting the level of retailer data, like, for example, from an Instacart, and really being able to dig into, like, where are the sales actually coming from, and how to look at it in terms of performance. So that's been interesting.
Well, and then also who owns it too. So your point of, like, where does it live? Because they're not a retailer, that sale we don't know who it goes back to which retailer. So I basically always say, like, I'm the honorary salesperson who's on the marketing team that manages, making sure that we're, reaching shoppers through Instacart. Yeah.
I think we probably have I'm going to ask my last question and then open it up for questions from everybody. What are you most excited about going into 2025?
I can jump in there. This is a bit of a curveball, but I think NIL has really changed the landscape of how we've been thinking about our business. Just with the emergence of it and the huge competitive landscape around NIL, we obviously have athletes and things like that that are within our network. But I mean, I mentioned football earlier. Sports is huge, and so I think it's a bit of the Wild West on how we're going to continue to engage with athletes going forward, and also with the competitive nature, who's going to stick where. And so I'm really excited about really figuring that out and tapping into that and being obviously as someone who wants to get newer consumers, media is king. Like, how we're going to continue to have a sustainable landscape around NIL is something I'm really excited about figuring it out in 25.
I think it's great that you're on the regional side. One of the things that's been top of mind for me is where sports are going. And the more sports are moving to all these different streaming channels and whatnot, it's concerned me because there's more fragmentation, what happens to the sports and the engagement and whatnot down the road. And obviously my brand's very heavy in sports, as yours is.
Gaming, like Twitch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's, the impact of that. So I don't know if I'm excited about that, but worried about that for 25. What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, I think for me, and Jeff touched on it earlier, is really the health and wellness aspect, especially when it comes to food. There's a lot of it, from a political perspective, but then also just like, I feel like our brand is kind of on the forefront of kind of like that real food. We have a new campaign we just launched, so personally that makes me very excited about 2025, and it's all about real food. Mary's here with me. She's leading a panel here this afternoon, or roundtable, but we can tell you a little bit more about that. But it really just, for working in the food industry for 25 years and working on some products, let's just say that I maybe would never eat or just wasn't really I couldn't really get behind. I think, kind of that connection for me personally, working for a company that I actually, believe in, and to see that the power of, I think what COVID taught us is, like, we need to take a step back and look at what we're eating, what we're consuming, and ingredients. And I feel like our company is kind of on the forefront of that, but I think it's something that's going to be demanded more by more consumers as we get into the next year and beyond, for many reasons.
All right, great. Well, thank you both so much. I'm going to open it up to questions, see if any...
You're making it really easy on me.
Just stand right there.
This is the least walking I've ever done.
Brian Chapp, Tech Recipes. I'm probably going to ask a bunch of questions throughout this whole thing. So Omnichannel to me means a bunch of different platforms, right? Within those platforms, there's a bunch of different analytics that you can collect, but they aren't always standardized. How do your companies go about trying to standardize non-standard analytics in order to get the best insights? And if you want me to elaborate on that, I can.
Could you, please?
Yeah, so I don't know. I assume you're working on social, across social
Yep.
advertising, across programmatic advertising.
Yep.
You mentioned retail. Within each of those companies, you could have a company that has the same data outputs that are, let's just use a bad example, called clicks.
Yep.
Retail can call it engagements, social can call it clicks, and another one can call it widgets. But if you're trying to understand performance like an MMM model would
Yep.
across all of your channels all at once, you need to get to a layer of standardization in that data sets before you can derive that insight. And I guess the question is are you looking at it that way, or are you looking at it channel by channel? And if you're not looking at it that way, do you see benefit in doing so to try to determine some of the bad apples from the good apples, as I like to
It's
call
probably
it?
the latter, I would say. We're still, because we're, again, merging brand, we're still trying to figure out that. I think that's really one of our goals for the next year is really, we've had some realignment internally where we're really working very closely with not only our sales team, our analytics team, shopper, above the line team, and then taking, like, again, the retail data that we get too, right? Like, I'm less focused on, like, she's very focused on CPM driven, and I'm kind of like, well, I got to pay for the retail data, so the CPMs are always going to be more inflated. So then my ROAS is going to be lower because I'm paying a premium for the premium data. So I think we're kind of talking through like a first MMM, but that is something that we strive to do because, for many reasons. Go ahead.
Yeah, at the regional level, it's definitely standardization. I think what we do is we look across metrics, not only within our region, but total Red Bull North America and versus competition. And over time, as we keep that data consistent, it's good to see a read on where we're upticking and aligning that to our marketing activities. So I would say definitely at the regional level, it's about standardization and then making sure that we are comparing ourselves versus the appropriate competitor, age segment, also versus North America, and then versus global.
We have time for one more question. Don't make me call on you randomly, because I will. I saw a hand. All right. High knees, Emily. High knees. Go, go, go.
Thank you. You deserve a Red Bull.
Or a monster.
Or a monster, sorry. So I've got 2 teenagers at home, and we have cases of energy drinks that come to the house every week, okay? One of the newer ones, I think, too, that are taken to the market is Celsius, right? And you've got a lot of, this kind of gets into the health and wellness part of it as well, right? So the best brands play offense and defense at the same time to win, right? So how do you view kind of competitor conquesting as part of your offensive game?
That is a great question. And I actually was going to hit on this before. We talked about the perception of how important health is and having better for you alternatives. And I think oftentimes there's actual health and then there's perceived health, right? So I think Celsius, we know, has a strong perception of being healthy. But when we talk about what's actually in the can, a lot of people don't know it's loaded with caffeine. And, I think over time people will begin to see and understand what caffeine intake is, what is okay for you and then what is not okay for you. So I think for us, we always try to look internally. We know that we have a good product. It's not loaded with caffeine or what have you. So I think given our equity stance and where we are in the market, oftentimes it's looking inward first as opposed to chasing competition and figuring out how we can, where we already stand out and just telling that message so that the perception is improved. And so that's kind of generally we don't chase competition. We look inward first and then figure out what's the message that we need to tell and go from there.
I would say what Darryl said. No.
You guys are chasing each other?
So we don't chase competition.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a perception of being good for you that's not as accurate as people would expect it to be. Like, we have a plant-based caffeine product where, which is much healthier, but basically the perception is that, that they're coming out with a healthier product. And I think it's just how they started and their brand story and how they've, basically put it all out there. So I think, going back to what Darryl said, it's just making sure that, rather than going after them, which we do, but it's also about how do we tell our story a bit better and how do we make sure that people know about the benefits and the, efficacy of the product.
Sabrina, Kelly, Darryl, thank you guys so much.